We gotta go to the bullpen. Welcome, baseball fans, wherever you are, to the Highland Bullpen Baseball Podcast, coming at you all the way from Scotland. Hi there, I'm Richard, and along with my co-hosts and fellow Bullpen Bros, Alan, Yorkshire Dave and Dave Jr., we'll be running the rule over a remarkable couple of weeks in baseball with the Home Run Derby, the MLB Draft, the All-Star Game, Olympic Baseball, and the latest with our Mariners, our Tigers, Red Sox and White Sox. So without further ado, let's get that first pitch.
So of course the draft is all about getting the young lads, the college guys, I think some high school guys and what have you, drafted into the various major league teams. Dave, I think they do it a wee bit differently possibly from other sports, but it was recently. So why was it recently, and what did you pick up about it?
Yeah, I didn't realise. I mean, I was gearing up for the Home Run Derby and the All-Star Game, and went onto the MLB site and noticed that the draft was actually in process. And as ever, the MLB websites, I think they're fantastic. You get great information, and it was sort of loading up real time. So I don't think it was an actual spreadsheet, but it was like, it was as soon as a pick had been made, they updated the list. I think if I understood it correctly, there was over 600 players available in around 20 rounds of picks. And you're right, it's a mixture of high school and college graduates. So you've got, probably 18, 19-year-old high school kids in there, and then 20 plus college graduates. I could see that the top 250 were ranked, I don't know quite how they do it, but they'll have some sort of Byzantine way of ranking players on, so that clubs will know who's considered the top prospects. And so I was looking at the first round order, and I think we've talked about this before, and sort of jokingly said Detroit were quite high in their picks because they were getting the third pick in the first round, so they tend to go with the teams that perhaps didn't do so well in the previous season. And Boston, of course, had a particularly bad season last year, and they were right behind Detroit. They were fourth in the first round of picks. The Mariners were 12th, and Dave's White Sox were actually 22nd. So I was looking down, and I actually wrote them down, and thought, when I got to the end, there was only 29 teams in it. I thought, well, there's 30 MLB teams, and I hadn't read the sort of preamble, and the Houston Astros, poor old Houston Astros, our mate, Rob, they actually forfeited the first two rounds of draft picks as part of their penalty for, the illegal stealing of signs. And then I looked further, and as ever, everything gets very complicated, but quite interesting. There was something called a compensation pick in between round one and round two. So any team that I think has lost a free agent might be compensated for that. So I think, going from memory, what memory, I think one of the teams, what was the trade involving Trevor Bauer? I think the team that lost him as a free agent, Cincinnati Reds, was it? The Dodgers signed Trevor Bauer, so Los Angeles forfeited its second round pick, and I think the Cincinnati Reds then they got pick number 17, but they also got pick number 30, so they got like an extra one as compensation. And then there's something else called the competitive balance rounds. So these are the teams with the smallest markets, and the smallest revenue pools. And again, it'll be a really complex formula. But every year, a certain batch of teams will get this compensation pick again in between rounds. So I think there was a number of teams benefited from that. Let me just see who they were. Yeah, the first competitive balanced round was Marlies. The Tigers got one. Brewers, Rays, Reds, and Twins. So if you look at the Tigers, they got their third pick, and then they were number 32 because of the competitive balance pick, and they managed to get just the way the picks went. They don't always go first ranked player, second ranked player in order. And the Detroit Tigers, without going into detail, they got 2 of the top 9 ranked guys in their first 2 picks. So, obviously not going to see these guys necessarily for a couple of seasons down the line. But, it's potentially quite important. I think I might be right in saying Spencer Torkelson, who's already played this season, I think he was the first round draft pick last year, was he? Yeah. So very interesting. I don't know if you guys probably already knew a bit about it. I don't know.
The draft is always... I've probably never really focused significantly on the draft because it's such a strange concept to us, which maybe is the reason why we should focus on it. My mind is automatically confused by the fact that there is a standard rank. Well, there's a ranking system that somebody says 1 to 600. These are the guys to go for. I get that you might make slight tweaks because you might be after somebody you think fits your ethos, or more importantly, a particular type of player you're looking for. But given you're talking 2 or 3 years hence, it does sort of seem logical that you just try and get the best players going. If it was like a football team and you're going to throw somebody straight into the team, you would look at a particular position player. But if you're looking at somebody you want to develop over 3 years, so I think that's quite interesting. I did pick up 2 things of interest for me. You talk about the Tigers there, and I did have a wee look at the Tigers draft players, and so I now have found another Tigers player to find a bit of focus on, because they drafted a guy called Jackson Jobe, whose father is Brant Jobe, who is a top-level professional golfer. Interestingly, he was born in the same month as me, which means he plays in the seniors tour, surprisingly. But he's a number of he's been in the world's top 50, so he's not like a journeyman golfer. A number of tour wins there as well. So I find that good. And obviously, we talked when we did the Masters episode earlier. There was a chap playing in the Masters this year called Cameron Champ, whose father was in the Orioles team back in the day as well. So there is a connection there, baseball and golf. The other thing I found, I don't know if any of you picked up on something unique that our friends, the Angels did in the draft.
No, Alan.
Every draft pick they made was a pitcher.
Yeah, that's amazing, really, because I did look at that, and I've heard one of the sayings: you can't ever have too much good pitching. So I did notice the Tigers. I think of their first 5 or 6 picks that I made a note of, I think 5 out of 6 of them were pitchers, and the other was a shortstop. So, I probably do go for the pitching prospects. But yeah, they must feel as though they need some pitching, the old Angels.
A lot of competition for the young lads there together. But Dave Jr., did you manage to follow any of the draft?
I watched. I say I watched, but the way that the MLB run things, we've always been big fans of how they contribute to their online presence. And I watched some of it at the very start online. I think I'd noticed the Tigers and the Red Sox had quite early picks. It seemed to move at quite a slow pace, but again, that's perhaps me thinking about the only other experience of a draft that I've had was our draft for the Fantasy League. And that's quite slick, but I had to think about these people in a room making decisions. You couldn't just have 30 seconds between each pick. Before I go on, I know that Dave will talk later a bit more about this week in baseball, but there seems to be quite a lot of... It must be a really interesting week for so many people for so many different reasons. You've got the home run derby, you've got the All-Star game, and you've got the simple fact you're halfway through the season. Are you in with a shout or are you not? So the fact you've got all these young men, their families, waiting to see where their careers are going to take them. I think there must be thousands upon thousands of people hanging on that draft. And I've seen some instances before. The Tigers can draft Dave Ince, and the next minute he gets traded off to Baltimore. Within 10 minutes, he's got 2 different cities where he's going to be based. But again, something we always like to talk about in the show is just that how we link baseball in with Scottish or British football. And although on one hand, I really wasn't interested in the draft, I know nothing about the players. I know nothing about what they're going to bring to the respective teams in the next few years. You always have Scottish football fans who you've always got that friend of every club who knows what's going on at youth level. And he'll talk to you about the 16-year-old that's flying down the wing for Celtic, or the Hibs winger that's creating absolute havoc, and he's playing 2 years ahead of what he should. So I'm sure that throughout baseball fandom in the States or throughout the world, you've got similar types of men and women that really want to see the youth coming through. And the other part that I thought quite interested me is we're looking at this as Mariners, as Red Sox, as White Sox, as Tigers fans. So many of these players are going to spend their careers up and down. Is it the A-Leagues, the AAA leagues? Yeah. So you've perhaps got these clubs, and if let's say you're a White Sox guy, and your AAA club is affiliated with the White Sox, there's a good chance that pitcher is going to make his way to you. And there's a good chance that you might actually be able to influence that guy's career long before someone in the big leagues can. So I think it's just, there must be so many people with a real vested interest in this week in the draft in particular.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talked there about the young guys, and we talked there about comparisons with football, Dave. I'm conscious the Olympics is upon us, and I think the Olympics, from a football perspective, is under 23 or under 21 competition, but baseball was in the Olympics with it being in Japan, and hopefully that all goes ahead successfully. Have you done any research of what we can expect to see? Who's playing in the Olympics baseball? What that's all going to be all about?
I have. That almost sounded teed up, Alan. That's pretty good. That was quick slick.
If only my golf tee shots were as effective as that.
So, I had to be looking at it. Again, I hadn't really realised that. I'm a big fan of the Olympics, or I should say track and field. Track and field's when it always kicks off for me. And I know there's been a whole lot of negativity around the tournament itself, but I think you take it for what it is, and we enjoy it this year, whatever we managed to get. So when I heard that baseball and softball we're going to take part this year, again with our interest in baseball, I'll have a wee look and just see exactly what's coming up. So I could see it's been about 13 years since it was last featured at the Olympics. Sadly, it'll be dropped for Paris in 2024. But with it moving to LA in 2028, given that there's so much interest in the States, it looks likely that it'll make a reprise. So, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just baseball, but it's softball as well. So, to those of you that aren't in the know, softball will be the women and baseball the men. So the softball tournament actually starts tomorrow. So those of you listening just now, there's a good chance that some games have taken place. Each tournament will host 6 different teams. I'll kind of run through them quickly. The women's have got Australia, Japan, Italy, Mexico, Canada, and the US. So, quite the kind of heavy hitters in there. And there seems to be a bit more of a staple, although one did surprise me for the men's. Dominican Republic, great presence in the MLB. Japan and South Korea have got such a strong league as well. Mexico and the States, again, real influence in the MLB. But Israel are taking part.
Wow.
It's not really a country that I associated with baseball. So that'll be exciting to see all those teams take place. For those of you, a bit like myself, that didn't know the difference fundamentally between baseball and softball, the softball game appears to be a whole lot smaller, although the ball is significantly bigger. And the bat's smaller. It's similar to one of our cricket bats. And in softball, there's an underarm throw as opposed to an overarm throw. And the pitcher stands around about 20 feet closer to the batter. And also dimensions of the pitch. Baseball tends to be about 400 feet distance. Softball's around 200. And the plates themselves, first base, second base, third base, they're all a hell of a lot closer, being 60 feet apart as opposed to 90. So, no, it's two very similar games, but I'd imagine the women and the men would argue very different in their own way. So it'll be quite good to catch action across both. The only sad thing from our point of view is that there's no British representation. The women apparently came very, very close to qualifying, which would have been a real achievement. But I'd imagine we can all find a team to root for. I don't know if you gents from those teams getting called out, if you drift towards the States or otherwise. I don't know if you caught any of the action, Dave?
I was just going to chip in and say that I've always been a fan of the Olympics, and this is going to give away just how old I am, but the 1964 Tokyo Olympics is genuinely my first sporting memory, and it was fantastically covered by the BBC. I can still remember the theme tune, which I'm not going to sing for you, but you'll be able to get that online. And so that's 57 years ago. I don't think you had baseball in there. You might have had soccer actually, but I do remember the sort of the British medalists. There was a guy who won the long jump. I think was it not Wyn Davis. He was a soccer player. Right? Lynn Davis, who was a Welshman, and he won the long jump. And Anne Packer, Mary Rand, and I've forgotten the other one. I think we only got four. I'm pretty sure Joe Frazier was Smoking Joe was the heavyweight boxing champion. But that's it. 57 years on, here we are again.
I'll study the teams and I'll pick one sensibly, although I believe a betting man would put their money in Japan, because I think they're pausing their professional league to allow their players to play, but nobody in the MLB will be taking part. So I suspect they might have a slight advantage, which is fair enough. They've obviously managed to get the game into the Olympics. So, yeah, there we go. And I guess the excitement, it's like golf has been in the last couple of Olympics, and that's become a big thing for the players, and it's good to hear them talking about it. But the next thing I wanted to ask you about, Dave, then was imagine hitting a home run in the Olympics, or somebody who hits a home run to win a walk-off home run, perhaps to win a gold medal. But in talking of home runs, the other big event last week was obviously the Home Run Derby. So did you manage to pick up on some of that as well? Did you see some balls bouncing all over the place or have been hit out of the park?
I don't know whether they did this deliberately, but obviously there was 8 contenders in there. It was split quite evenly: 4 righties and 4 left-handed hitters, 4 southpaws. The number 1 seeded guy was Shohei Ohtani, but he wasn't in, so they mixed it up. It was you matched up against the seeded. He was seeded number 1, but he didn't play until the last pairing in the first round. So I watched the whole thing, the whole first round, and it was superb. I don't know where do you start. The guy that was spoiler alert, I give away the winner already. But the guy who was only seeded 5th, but he was the holder. It wasn't played last year. And it's Polar Bear Pete Alonso. Have you seen this guy? Have you heard him? He's just the most focused, serious guy you've ever come across in your life. And he hits the most. I think they get 3 minutes, don't they? 3 minutes. And they've got their own pitcher. So it's a sort of friendly batting practice type pitch. But it's not an automated machine. It's their own individual pitcher that they choose to pitch them. So they've got 3 minutes. It's quite a strenuous event if you think they're trying to hit the ball out of the park with every swing. And during that 3 minutes, they can take a 1 minute timeout whenever they want, which they do. And then there is a bonus 30 seconds at the end of the 3 minutes, and they get another 30 seconds if they hit, let me get this right, if they hit a home run at least 475 feet, I think, so it's got to be 475 feet to get the extra 30 seconds. I think they all made it. And he hit the most home runs in the first round, 35. Absolutely incredible. So that was in his 4 minutes. Yeah, it was incredible. And the longest one, I didn't think they were going to hit him this far, but the longest one, can you hazard again? Well, sort of half giving away 475. They're all hitting them at least 475, but the longest
555.
Not quite that far. Not quite 511. That far. It's 521 Soto of the Nationals. So it was pretty incredible. As I say, it's quite late at night, early in the morning, and I thought, well, I'm going to stay up and I'm going to watch Ohtani. And I had a feeling somehow that he wasn't going to win it. I don't know why. I think he went second against Soto, and he got 22 in his 3 minutes and bonus time. And for the first 50 seconds, I think Ohtani didn't hit a home run, sort of ground balls nearly every time, possibly trying too hard. And then he started getting going, and he got to 22, and it was a tie. So they went off into an extra 1 minute, and they both hit. This guy doesn't do anything other than interesting or entertaining, does he? So they both hit 6 runs, extra runs each in the extra minute, 28 each. So they went into a swing off, and you got 3 swings. So it was treated like a proper at bat. So it wasn't timed then. So you could choose, you could not swing at a ball. So you were waiting for a home run friendly ball. And Soto went first, and he hit all 3 of his for home runs, and Ohtani missed his first one he swung at. So he was out, but still, he was exhausted, man. He was putting so much effort into it. Bear in mind, he's going to be pitching in the All-Star game the next night and playing DH. Guy, this was the moment when I thought, I really see what all the fuss is about. He's just fantastic.
Yeah. Dave, did you see any of it? Dave Jr.?
I caught some of it, and I have seen some of the home run derbies over the years. Maybe just some points that Dave didn't mention there that I've always found interesting. Each guy seems to have their own pitcher, and they've got a kind of safety rail from which to stand behind, because you could take a right clobbering. Because again, the pitcher is then perhaps, whilst Ohtani's hitting the ball, the pitcher's reaching into a bucket to get another ball, so they're not really kind of concentrating. But their entire body, except whichever arm they choose to pitch with, is completely hidden away, and it's just interesting how they do it. Further afield than that, you've also got I'd love to know how they get the kids for outfield. So you think about a normal baseball game, it's the most bizarre thing to watch. Suddenly you just see about 20 kids running around in a group that you can throw a blanket over, and they're just chasing down any any kind of pop flies.
All right.
And it's just great. I don't know if it's players' kids or anything, or if they win a competition, but you've just got all these kids running around, having fun. You've got people in the stands. Again, it's America and American sports just have this fantastic way of involving people. And for what is effective, I'm trying to think of a comparison for football, but you've got people shelling out money to go and watch. You're not talking about overarm fastballs here at 100 miles per hour. They're nice pitches that people are expecting to hit, but they're paying good money to just watch and have this great family day out and maybe catch a ball. So it's really quite something to watch. Again, there's always something happening, but no, I wish I'd seen Ohtani now. Just I think we're big fans of him on the show, and it does really sound like he is that bit special. I feel every couple of nights during the White Sox game, they're talking about his latest exploits. Is he moving ahead at the top of the home run league? No, he's just struck out 8 guys tonight, and he's a real one-off.
Yeah, actually, one of our listeners asked us on social media if we could just devote an episode of the Highland Bullpen to Ohtani. So we've done a wee bit tonight, and maybe we can do a little bit more one other time as well.
Should you give a shout out to Mr. Ohtani that messaged you, Alan?
Yeah, Steve will be impressed if he is in the same ballpark as Mr. Ohtani, and that competition where you win to run around the park to pick up the pop flies. Please, if any of our listeners know, please tell us how to enter that competition, because I am only 12 years old, so I think I would meet the age eligibility on that. So I think I would thoroughly enjoy that event. So a few facts and figures there for the home run derby as well. And just a couple of things I came across in the last week in the baseball world and the wider sporting world, because a couple of firsts and a couple of world leading records, but a few interesting things here. So the Tigers actually did something last week which they have never done in their 121-year history. And actually, the final score here was 1-0, which I think is one of our favourite scores. Was it Richard that plumped for a 1-0 as his favourite score? So the Tigers recorded a 1-0 win against the Twins. But what made this unique was that Robbie Grossman scored the only run of that game. He scored it with a home run, and it was the first at bat of the game. So that it was last done in the MLB 7 years ago, never done in 121 years of Tigers baseball. But if that's your favourite score, how do you feel about that's the one score taking place in the first pitch you see in the game? Is that add something unique, or is it thinking I'm here for a run fest, and then you end up with a pitching success?
Yeah, that is a dilemma, Alan, but I think as long as I get my 1-0 scoreline in the end, I wouldn't mind too much if it came off the very first pitch of the game. I think I could handle that.
As long as you took your seat early and you weren't...
Well, that's the other thing. The significant number of baseball fans will not be there at the start of a game, or they'll be at the concession stands or whatever as well.
Now, Alan, I think among all of the Bullpen Bros, I think you've probably got the widest range of sporting interests, and it's been a pretty exciting couple of weeks for you as well regarding those.
My other sporting passions, golf and cycling. Big events last week, the Open. The Open won by Colin Morikawa, an American golfer. And again, this is quite interesting. He became the first golfer in history that his first 2 majors he won were both won at his first attempt at those majors. Now, the reason I think these things are amazing, I know international travel 150 years ago when the Open was kicking off wasn't a thing, but it is quite sort of hard to believe that you think of all the great golfers who've won. They'll have won the Open, and then they've said, "Oh, let's go and try the US Open or the Masters or whatever." But nobody's been able to do it. And then we've got this young 24-year-old come along. He's now played a total of 8 majors. This was obviously his first Open, and he's won 2, and winning the one on his debut is fantastic. I would like to see how well he does when he comes back to the Open, and it's a bit windier and a bit wetter. But fair play to him, top golfer. And the Tour de France, one of my other passions, threw up a few interesting things as well. We had Tadej Pogačar won the Tour. And obviously the Tour is ridden in July every year, but it wasn't ridden in July of 2020 for COVID. So 12 months ago, this guy had never ridden in a Tour. In fact, 11 months ago, this guy had never ridden in a Tour de France. And now he has won 2. And not only did he win the yellow jersey, he won the polka dot jersey for the King of the Mountains, and he won the white jersey for the best young rider, leaving our own Mark Cavendish to pick up the green jersey. And Mark himself created statistical glory by his 34th stage win, equaling the cannibal Eddie Merckx. Very different types of riders, but a fantastic achievement in this day and age. And for a guy who many people would have written off, I could never do it, written off for a few years. So absolutely fantastic to see to see that happen. So yeah, sport for me is not complete unless there's something unique happening to these guys. So thank you to the Tigers, Colin Morikawa, and the Tour de France boys for giving me some statistical history. I absolutely loved it. So great stuff. These sportsmen are stars, and what happens with the stars of baseball? They go to the All-Star game, and I'm sure you kept a bit of an eye on that, and you can tell us a wee bit of how that went.
We'll probably talk about the score, and I think you've got some thoughts as well, Dave. But from my point of view, the White Sox had 4 call-ups, really, really well deserved. Most of it was in the pitching side. Tim Anderson came in as a bit of a last-minute replacement, got in the pitch. Tim Anderson, by the way, is going through a hell of a run just now. I think he's something about 16-game hitting streak, a 13-game run streak. Right. He's playing really well, but I was really chuffed for him to get an appearance. He didn't get an at-bat, but he managed to get on the pitch and play at shortstop. But 3 other White Sox were selected on the pitching side. Lance Lynn, who just is having a phenomenal season. Carlos Rodon, who's kind of a real breakout guy. He's having the season of his life. And I think he could be up there with Ohtani in a kind of cult way. Liam Hendricks is a real character. And I don't know if Dave knew, but he was mic'd up for... So Liam Hendricks, he's got saves all season. He seems to just be breaking loads of records for the Sox. And he pitched the final inning and got the save for the American League, which I don't want to spoil anything, Dave, but I believe that the American League are on a bit of a run over the last few years.
Yeah, I think we talked about it the last time we were on, didn't we? I think Rich asked the question who was ahead, and it's very close. But I think they've won the 2 ahead out of the American League, but they've won something like the last 6 or 7 or 8. Is it?
I think it's 8 now.
In a row, yeah. But yeah, I did watch that, and I was thinking about you actually because, I mean, obviously I've got a massive Aussie connection, and these from Perth, Australia, and they had quite a few players mic'd up, and they were speaking to them. Was it Bogarts? Xander Bogarts was mic'd up in an at-bat. The commentator, I mean, the picture is in his wind-up, and the commentator says, "What are you expecting here, Xander?" And he says, "Fastball," and he throws a sort of a slider away or something, and he misses, strikes out. and off he goes. But then again, how cool are these guys? Freddie Freeman, who I really like at first base, he was mic'd up as well, and I was speaking to him as a guy on second base, and they're talking to him, and the guy at bat hits a ground ball over a shortstop, and Freeman just says, "Cool as you like," just says, "Oh, double play." Steps back onto the bag just in time to get the relay from, sort of 6-4-3 double play. And it's, these guys are so amenable, aren't they? I know I know they're paid to do this and they're entertainers, but absolutely marvelous. But yeah, what Dave talked about with our friend, the great Aussie, Western Australia, Perth man, Liam Hendricks, he was mic'd up and he thought it wasn't working, didn't he? Did you realise that, Dave?
Yeah.
Because he couldn't hear the commentators, so he thought it wasn't working. So we got quite a few sort of colourful outbursts.
I think it brings a touch of humanity to it as well, and it makes people so much more personable. Now, I know there's no chance of miking up Harry Kane ready to take a penalty for Spurs in the FA Cup final, but I think it just shows maybe how in touch some of the players are, or if it's just that they don't take the All-Star game seriously, it'll be somewhere in between. But you do see in regular MLB games, these guys are mic'd up. I think it's on the kind of nights when Fox show games, maybe a Sunday night. But again, as Dave said, I've not seen someone batting, but you see guys in outfield, and the next minute they're actually talking as they catch a ball in live play, and you think that's quite. It doesn't sound difficult, but I mean, you could be under a lot of pressure if you make a mistake. So to volunteer and to go out with that, even it's quite often during a lot of games, you've got managers talking to the commentators and just letting them know about, we've got Dave injured, so we're bringing Alan in. He's going to move out to right field and Richard's going to move across to centre field. And they'll try and explain things. And it's not giving the game away. It's just talking about basics to keep fans in the know. And I think it's what keeps baseball quite close to the fans. All these little innovations that we just we poo-poo over the years.
I think we've said it on the show before that something like an all-star game in football, we would look down our noses at. We just wouldn't see it. But when you see the big stars, and I saw on Twitter there was always a gala dinner the night before, and they were there with their wives, their partners, their kids, and all that sort of stuff. And it looked very glam, and you thought, these guys are out representing their sport, representing their teams, representing their league and themselves, and having a great time whilst they're at it. And there's good lessons in there for us as fans. So enjoyed that. That was good. So obviously the MLB trundles on as well. We're now moving into the second half of the season. Dave Jr., how did the Highland Bullpen division, how did our teams fare against each other in the first half of the season? Have we got an update?
Sorry, I don't. I'm not at my kind of laptop just now, I'm afraid, Alan. Although that makes sound a bit of an excuse because the Tigers won, I think it was the last interdivisional game. I think the Tigers beat the White Sox 2-1. Really, again, I've always said it, I think the Tigers are a really good outfit. Sitting in a solid third just now, safe from danger, safe from relegation. But mid-season, mid-table respectability, and I do regularly count their position in the overall leagues. I think they're 22nd just now out of 30, doing well. They're 9-6 in favour in July to date, so we're on track for a third winning month. Richard would have enjoyed last night's win, 14-0 over a team from Arlington called the Rangers. So even Richard cheered that one along. And that was on the back of a 7-0 win over the Twins. So having in that 9-6, they actually lost a series 4-0 to the Twins. But there's something good happening in Detroit. Well done to Mr. Hinch and the teams. And Miggy's hitting homers, Miggy's getting hits, and Miggy's getting RBIs as well. So the numbers
keep piling up for him as well. So that's fantastic to see as well.
I don't know how Richard feels, but at the moment, I think it's not taking anything away from the Tigers, but just now there's a really good chance that 3 of our 4 teams could feature. Not just in the postseason, but in the American League postseason, which is a hell of a small amount of teams. We could have 3 from the 5 potentially. The Mariners have come onto a really good run recently. I think they're only 2 or 3 games back, and it's a stat. I know Dave will be all over things Red Sox, but have watched a couple of their games recently. And by the way, I think Boston are becoming my second team. Really, I like the character of a lot of the players and the fans. Maybe not all the fans, but some of the fans. There was a stat. There was a stat that they came out with, and Dave might be aware of it. So during the recent Boston Yankees series, they came out and said, we're at the halfway point of the season, just after the halfway point, and I thought this was fantastic. But they were saying if Boston carried on with a 500 season, so 500 is far below what Boston are carrying out just now. For those of you who don't know, 500 would be winning 5 games out of every 10. And at present, they're winning 6 out of every 10. So if Boston were to carry on with a 500 season, the Yankees still wouldn't win the league by having a 600 season, which would be the Yankees trying to catch up by winning 6 out of every 10. Now, from what I can see, the Yankees are just over 500 just now. So to then have that pickup, you may think, looking at it just now, Boston only 1.5 games ahead of Tampa, only 7 ahead of New York. But when it actually comes down to it, over the course of a long season, that's a real swing that has to take place. Now, I know we're talking about 4th place Yankees trying to win the league, but when it's quite a tight league. And for the Yankees to come back, I think it just shows the power that could be sitting in Boston's hands for that division. I'm not sure how you feel about Boston just now, Dave.
Yeah, I think the last time we spoke, they were coming off, 11 games, and they'd won 10 and lost 1 before not quite before the All-Star break, but the last time we had an episode that went out on air. The last 10 just now is they've won 4 and lost 6, although for the month of July, I think they're actually 500. So I think I did say at the time, something's got to give. You just can't carry on winning at the rate they were. And they were converting, quite close games into wins. So they lost a couple of series just before the All-Star break, and against the Angels and the Phillies, 2-3 game series. And Boston won the first game in each of those. But then they went to the All-Star break, and they had 5 players in there. They had, I think for the first time ever, they had the starting third baseman in Rafi Devers and the shortstop Xander Bogaerts. I think that's the first time they've had those 2 positions as starters in their franchise history. Plus they had JD Martinez, who came in as the DH as Shohei Ohtani went out of the game. And they also had a starting pitcher, Voldy, and the closer, Barnes. So they were really well represented, which shows you how well they've been doing. But they've got a very busy July. I think they've got something like, they were supposed to have 17 games in 17 days, but the first game against the Yankees was called off. It was going to be the only game on the Thursday after the All-Star game, I think it was. And I think the Yankees have got a COVID in the camp, didn't they? And there were 6 players. They already got quite a few injuries, the Yankees. 6 additional players out, including their one real star of the season, Aaron Judge. So, so going into that, they missed the first game. And the first game of the season, the Red Sox won 4-0. A really good win. And the next game, which I watched live, and it looked like, I watched it as live the next day, and I thought it had been called off because there was really bad rain. But they managed to play through the rain. It was really strong rain, and I think the Red Sox had a 1-0 lead going into the fifth. The Yankees tied it up, and then they took the lead in the sixth, and that was the point at which the dreaded tarp came out, and there was no more play after that. It's quite an eventful game, but I got the feeling, this is a long way around of saying it, but I think that might be a little bit of a turning point for the Yankees. They came back the next night and they were in control the whole game and beat the Red Sox 9-1. I'm not saying they're going to sort of go on a massive run, but I think it could be a bit of a turning point for the Yankees, and they're going to be dangerous even with the guys that they're missing.
Was there some fisticuffs involved in the series, Dave? I know it's quite a spirited rivalry, but I thought I caught some highlights from the night before to maybe showing a couple of ejections or tempers flared.
There was a couple of incidents. I did notice earlier on where the great coverage of a ball that was just went over the short porch in right, and I thought, gosh, there's fans are pretty close, and I think there's an intimidatory factor at the Yankees, to say the least. And I think he's my favourite player, Alex Verdugo, young outfielder. And I think mentioned this before. He was mic'd up the last time they were in the Bronx, and he had a good interaction with the Yankee fans, who were giving him a lot of stick, and he gave it back, and there was respect. This time there was a bit of a naughty incident. Apparently what happened was there was a couple of Red Sox fans in there. He fielded a ball and he threw it towards the Red Sox fan. They usually point who they're going to throw it to, but apparently a Yankee fan caught it instead. And when he turned his back, the Yankee fan threw it back at him and hit him in the back. Now, he didn't take very kindly of this, and Alex Cora took the team off, and it was a bit of a bad incident. Later on in the game, there was, I think I'm pretty sure it was the same game, there was a home run, and it looked like one of those, we talked about this before as well, the fan interference things. A Yankee fan leant over the wall and caught the ball, and this was, it might have been the go-ahead run or the 3-1 run, and the Red Sox challenged it on the basis of fan interference, and he definitely did interfere, but they ruled it a home run because it was going to score anyway. Probably fair enough, but if you're a Red Sox fan, it was a bit of a, and I reckon this, really the fans were going wild. They love it. They don't call it the Bronx Zoo for nothing, do they? And I wouldn't be surprised if this was, you saw a bit of a return to form for the Yankees.
Yeah, I think within the bullpen, with Dave's leadership, we root for the Red Sox in the East Division. So we're quite happy to say those damn Yankees and give the Red Sox our backing from here in Scotland. And the Red Sox guys are doing us well. And we've got our fantasy league. It's been a couple of weeks since we updated you on that, and we suffered another defeat. We fell down to 8th place in the fight for the top 6 for playoffs. We're 4.5 games, I think, off 6th place. But this is a 2-week game. So as we record, we're well into it. We're probably only half the games into it because it's obviously last week didn't have too many games, but we're 8-1 up this week. I'm confident we will maintain at least that position, but we're tied 0-0 on saves and holds. So I've kept Mr. Graveman off the Mariners in the team. He's done a few, but I've got Gregory Soto of the Tigers back in, and of course Josh Taylor of the Red Sox, who's done us a few turns before as well. I think mostly with holds, from Josh, but I'm going for that. And if those boys can come good and the other numbers stay the same, I'm predicting a record win for us come this weekend, and we'll be back there fighting for our place in the top 6, the Highland Bullpen.
I saw there was another category, stealing bases, weren't they? And the Red Sox have called up a guy just talking about drafts. I mean, he's 24. He made his debut. He hit in the Bronx, and he hit his first pitch for a single. And I see he got his first home run the other night. But he's got speed, and definitely going to be one to look out for stealing bases. But I checked him out. Someone's already snapped him up. So
some people are good at this, aren't they?
They are, yeah. They look out for it. But so that was a good move from Boston to bring him up with all the games that they've got. And he looks like a really good, lively player.
Yeah, I was struggling to think of a way of finding a player who's available who'll steal some bases for us, because that's a category we score lowly in. But that was a good spot. Unfortunately, we've been beat to second base there. So we'll have another we look at that and see what else we can do. But we'll keep battling away. We'll stay true to our principles of picking players from our 4 teams. We're not interested in your Otanis and your Bowers and what have you. We know where our loyalties lie, and it's glory or bust with our boys. So the week ahead, gents, anything particular you're looking forward to in the next 7 days or so?
I mean, I don't mind kicking off with the White Sox, and I didn't really kind of talk about the White Sox recent run of form. But, it feels pretty good, actually, getting into things just now. Every part of the team, somebody's always contributing some night. And although they're kind of going through the recent series since I've been on, we lost to Detroit, picked up a win over Minnesota, went to Baltimore and swept them. And the really interesting one is just recently we finished up a series with the Astros. So about a month ago, the White Sox travelled to Houston for the first time in a while. And we were kind of ravaged with injuries, but they swept us away, and they looked an excellent outfit. And it wasn't just a kind of 3-0 sweep; it was 4-0 across the 4 nights. And they came to Chicago a few nights ago, and they really gave us a doing again in that first night. And you think to yourself, as players, you must think maybe they've got the Indians sign with us, and how do we kind of move on from this? But the White Sox came back and won the next 2 games. So I think it's really good. If you're going to make the postseason, I think you might have to face Houston at some point. Really strong outfit, really, really good group of players. In terms of what's coming up for the Sox, we're in the middle of a series with Minnesota, who at the moment it looks as if we might be able to do Allen a favour and kind of knock them out a wee bit more.
Good stuff.
And then we've got a really tricky couple of games. Milwaukee. I mean, the Brewers just seem to be on an absolute rip just now. I think a lot of people are just speaking about them as a really still underrated team, but they're doing really quite well. And then we've got hopefully a good series against Kansas. We've played really well against them over the last 18 months. I picked up quite a few victories. And then kind of at the end of next week comes a 3-game series against Cleveland, who are our biggest rivals. Although they do sit, I think it's the biggest gap at the top of the table just now sits between the Sox and the Indians in terms of first and second place. But it'd be great to put a little bit more distance between us.
For me, Alan, and I think for the Mariners, it's all about the upcoming 4-game series against the Oakland A's, which will give us a chance to make up some of that ground that Dave Jr. was talking about with our direct rivals in the division as well. And if we can take that 3-1, for example, even, then that's going to make up a kind of significant difference, because it is the classic football-style 6-pointer. So yeah, the Mariners against the A's are what I'm really looking for this week, to get that kind of 3-1 minimum would be fantastic.
Dave, anything from the Red Sox?
Yeah, well, they were back to form last night. They put on a lot of runs. I think, as we were saying, Alex Cora freshened up the lineup by putting in Jaron Duran, and I think they put him up the order as well. And they moved the DH JD Martinez. He's been batting number 3 all season, but I see that he's been a bit quiet recently, and they moved into 5th spot, moved Duran up into 2nd, and it worked. I think they scored 8 runs in the first innings and won the game 13-4. So hopefully they'll go on. This is against Toronto, who are still in Buffalo. I believe at the end of the month they're going to actually move back. Well, they haven't played in Toronto this season, have they? Well, I think they're going to play in Toronto either the beginning of August, at the end of this month. And it reminds me, actually, is of one of my favourite players is Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's the first baseman at Toronto, and he won, just in case we're in danger of going full episode without mentioning my all-time favourite player. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. scored a home run in the All-Star game, and it turned out to be he's another guy that doesn't do anything by halves, and that was the 200th home run scored in an All-Star game. The first was scored by Babe Ruth in 1933 at Comiskey Park. And the second was the 100th was by Jimmy Wynn. Vladimir's father, senior, also played in the All-Star game alongside other father and son combinations, Ken Griffey Jr. and Senior, and Bobby and Barry Bonds. And Vlad won he got the MVP. And he's the youngest player. I think he's only 22. He was the youngest MVP in history of the All-Star game, and he was awarded the Ted Williams Award from the commissioner, which was a glass or crystal baseball bat. So there you are.
Is there a better award in baseball?
No, I don't think so.
How else can we finish the show but by talking about the Ted Williams Award? So congratulations! What a wee trophy to have in your trophy cabinet. So good stuff. Well done. We hope you've all enjoyed listening, and we'll be back soon with our own take and update from the Highland Bullpen in due course, folks. Thanks for listening.